welcome to another fast and fun video here. It's Rich, and this week's video we're taking a look at a 2009 Vauxhall Astra SRi. So this one here is the 5th generation of Astra. The Astra's been around since the late 70s, over 4 decades. Vauxhall have been building the Astra, and it's always been a direct rival to the Ford, well, originally Escort, and in more recent years the Focus. And the sporty models are both, where for Vauxhall we've had the SRi and the GTE, and most recently the VXR, battling it out with the Fords, originally the XRs and the RSs, and then more recently the STs as well. This 5th gen, designed, built, manufactured between about 2004 and 2010, and this particular one's a 2009 with 82,000 miles on the clock. Let's have a quick walk around the car. I think it's fair to say that this SRi is quite hard-nosed, quite cutting, quite sharp, quite angular looks, and I think it's aging quite well, really. It's this one, and I think people have commented that the sort of, once the VXR range came out, that the SRi was more of a sort of a brand name rather than a sporty hatch. But we'll take it for a drive and we'll see what the sporting credentials are. But if you look at it, actually it runs on 18-inch 5-spoke alloys, quite low profile tyres. I'll just check what the profile is of these, and there you go. So they are 225 40s running on 18s. And I think it's quite a nice looking car, to tell you the truth. This is the 1.8 4-cylinder model, producing about 140 brake horsepower, dominated really by those 18-inch alloys and this huge sill running along the base of the car as well. You can see from the side profile of the car how it's quite on the coupe version, it's quite a steep raked rear window with the spoiler sat just above it. Does cause a letterbox effect when you're driving, but I actually think the Astra SRi looks quite smart, really set off well by those 18-inch alloy wheels. And I think it's also nice in this particular colour, which is a sort of a silvery, light goldy coloured, depending on how the light reflects from it. The rear windows got that slight tint to it as well, which just sort of, yeah, I think it looks a smart looking car. Let's take a look inside. So, being the SRi, it's got the full leather interior. And this here, as you can see, if we go across to the driver's side, a little bit of rippling there on the base of the seat, lumbar supports, some light signs of wear, but really nothing to be concerned about. The dash, pretty standard dash with the rev counter and the speedo. And then the centre console, it's the typical Vauxhall vertical display. 5-speed manual. And then to get into the back seats, which, because this is definitely a family car, just pull up on that lever, the seats slide forward, and you get a look at how big and how much space there is there in the back. If you take a look, that is my driving position. There, I'm just over 6 foot, 15.5 stone, and there is adequate space there for 2 people in the back. Headroom a little bit tight, but it's okay. It's absolutely okay. So this is definitely, for me, this does sit into the family car. It can be a practical everyday type of car. Remember, the Astras came in so many different versions, including obviously this is the coupe, but they came in the 5-door hatch as well as the estate. Boot space here for the coupe, just as practical. Lots of storage there. Really deep recess. A little bit narrow, if anything. If you look there, a little bit narrow, but actually you get a whole host of stuff in there. What's my first impressions of when you sit in this SRi? Well, most importantly is normally the driving position. I've played around with the seat. It has got height adjustment in the seat, so I can get a little bit lower. The steering wheel's got height adjustment as well, so the driving position is pretty okay. Steering wheel's probably a little bit too big, but it's okay. And you're looking through the rear view mirror, is that impression of looking through a letterbox, because obviously it's the coupe style of car. Lumbar sport's okay. It's not got a huge amount, but it's enough. A little bit tight on the thighs, and I'm a 15.5 stone, just over 6 foot guy. The initial impressions in the driving position is it's okay. It's pretty good. What else is important? The gear stick. Your hand just falls to the gear stick. It's situated really close to your left knee, but that's okay. I'm just in 5th gear now, just pootling down the hill. The ride's on the firm side, but I think Vauxhall have got this pretty well, because actually it's quite a weighty, feelsome, direct steering. Before I drove the car, checked all the tyre pressures and things, and yeah, it rides on the firmer side, but if you're buying an SRi, I expect it to have some degree of firmness. The dash layout, it's simple. It's what I expect. The rev counter on the left, speedo on the right, with the fuel in the middle, and a small trip digital readout in the middle. It's functional, it's simple, but it's those things that sometimes manufacturers just try to do things different. Well, keep it simple, and it's there. As for the centre console, yeah, you've got a digital display there for the time, temperature, radio, etc. It's clearly from the noughties. It's clearly very, very old school type of display, but that's okay, and it's easy to see, it's easy to view. I've not been in here long. Most of the displays, yeah, look to be okay. The controls for the heating, fans, etc., a little bit low, but everything seems okay. Everything seems to fall to hand. Yes, it's pretty plasticky, a little bit rubbery across the car. I mean, some of this sort of fake carbon, but you've got to put this into context of how much this car is worth. So it passes. Whether it's as good as Ford or not, I don't know. It's got the typical Vauxhall vertical centre console, which Vauxhall have stayed patriotic to for years and years, and that's absolutely reminiscent here in this Gen 5 SRi. The lower profile tyres of the SRi, there's quite a lot of road noise at sort of national speed limit. It's the coupe body, but visibility's, well, these 8 pillars are quite chunky. So there is a bit of a spot there, and especially this has got wind deflectors on, which I have to say doesn't help with regard to visibility. And the traditional very long coupe type of doors, that's reminiscent really of any 3-door coupe that comes as a 5-door hatch. So that's really to be expected. engine doesn't really like to be revved too much. As you go up through the revs there, revs up to 6,500, but really that gear change is so notchy, it really spoils the experience. But you've got to say, the car's quick enough, the braking is sound, it's sure and sound, but that's from 2,000 revs up to 3, 4, it's picking up 5, picking up there up to 6,000. That second to third, it's really notchy and it's really slow and awkward, and yeah, the car's definitely quick enough. Just spoiled by this flipping gearbox at the moment. Just, it's one of these gearboxes that it's almost saying to you, don't flip it, just doesn't want you to change gear. What I am really pleased about is actually the steering. This is pretty good. It's very direct. You can move the car. Yeah, it's actually, it's very direct. You can feel that you can turn in. The turning's crisp. I actually like it. Beginning to like this. Say the centre dash is very Vauxhall. They've been with this vertical dash for years, and whether you like it or not, it is reminiscent. There's a bit of colour in there with the silver plastic and some little bit cheap carbon plastic. But do you know what? It lifts it up quite well. They've not gone overboard with it. It's all okay. I am looking around for cup holders, which there doesn't seem to be any. So unless I've actually missed those, it does seem to be lacking cup holders. And I think for everyday cars, which the Vauxhall Astra SRi is absolutely the everyday car, can be quite annoying. Somewhere to put your drink, somewhere to put your coffee on the morning commute, on the way to the shops. You just find that, and I'm still looking and I still can't find one. I found it there. So it's actually behind the gear stick, it's behind the handbrake, and I've sort of, how on earth you can put a bottle there, or worse, a hot drink there, is whether that for the driver or the passenger, you're just going to have to break your arm to actually get it out without spilling any. So that's like Vauxhall, come on, you can do better with that. Something simple as getting a flipping cup holder. So what do I think? What's my summary of this Vauxhall Astra SRi? Well, I really like it, and I think if I had between 1 and 2k to spend on a everyday family car that had some sporty credentials, the Vauxhall Astra SRi would have to be in the mix. And before today, I'm not sure that would have been the case. I think I'd have probably discounted it because it was the Vauxhall. I think I'd have been more persuaded to look at the Focus and the Focus STs. It's 4-cylinder engines, not the most quiet, it's not the most refined, but it revs up to 6,500 revs. It pulls strongly throughout the rev range. It makes use of each one of its 140 brake horsepower. So it makes, perhaps not fast, but certainly swift progress. The steering, it's sharp, it's direct, it's feelsome. It's actually pretty good. And I think the whole package, even the interior, it's still, I think, refreshing. I still think it looks quite smart. I'm a Ford person. and I look back at the cars that I've owned, and I've only ever owned one Vauxhall, albeit I did like, and I've always liked, the angular, sharp, chiselled edge looks of the Gen 5 Astras, and I think they've aged really, really well. Some may say, the purist, that you need to go for the VXR, but they're much more expensive, and the SRi has been toned down to a spec rather than the sports car. But I disagree. This 4-cylinder 1.8 140 brake horsepower engine is quick enough for most road users. But the winner for me for the Vauxhall Astra SRi is value. This car with this mileage can be picked up in this condition for only about 2k. And if you're happy to take more miles and a bit more wear, for only 1,000. Compare that to its arch nemesis, the Focus ST, you're looking at probably 4 or 5k for the equivalent condition car. So for me, if your budget's constrained, you want something as an everyday practical car, but it's got some fast and fun bits into it, you have to consider the Gen 5 Astra SRi. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, please subscribe and stay tuned, because there's another video coming up very, very soon.